All right, so we're gonna, the Marianist moment tonight, I want to share a little bit about Father Chaminade, Mary, and Saved by the Bell. Does everyone know what Saved by the Bell is? Awesome. This is going to be great then. All right, so we're going to start with the Father Chaminade quote, and this is one of my favorite Father Chaminade quotes. It's, "I am like a brook that makes no effort to overcome obstacles in its way. All the obstacles can do is hold me up for a while, as a brook is held up. But during that time, it grows broader and deeper, and after a while, it overflows the obstruction and flows along again." So here's where Saved by the Bell comes in. So there's this great scene in Saved by the Bell. It's actually one of my favorites, probably one of the few I remember. And so Saved by the Bell, for anyone who's not super familiar with it, it's this high school drama from the 1990s, and it follows this group of high schoolers around as they kind of meander through high school, causing all kinds of trouble and doing what high schoolers do. And it's really not that great, but I think it's awesome. And there's one particular scene, as I was reflecting on this quote, there's one particular scene that kept popping into my mind. It's this scene where one of the main characters is this girl named Jessie, and Jessie is your typical like overachiever, really high performer, takes on every activity she possibly can, excels in it, and as a result, like there are all these pressures and expectations on her. And as those pressures mount and the expectations mount, and she's elevating in her career, high school career, she's getting to be a junior and senior, all of a sudden you have this culmination point where all these things are coming together and the pressure becomes too much. And she just totally collapses. And there's this scene in Saved by the Bell where it's in classic high school drama. She collapses and she's like, "There's no time, never any time." And it's awesome. And if you don't know that scene, you should go look it up after this. So a couple of weeks ago, I actually had a moment myself that was kind of like this. And you guys might be able to relate to this. So I had one of those weeks where about anything that could possibly happen was happening. So it started out, one of my daughters who had just had surgery ended up waking up with a bloody nose that ended up in a very early morning ER visit that lasted for hours. And so we go through the ER, she's fine, by the way, in case you were wondering. So we go through the ER visit, we get back home just in time for me to dive into a full work day. And I thought, all right, I'm exhausted. Like, I just got to push through this. It's going to be okay. And then we got a call from the insurance agent of somebody who hit my wife's car, letting us know that they were going to total the car. And you know the headache that causes. All of a sudden, my mind's like reeling. I'm like, okay, now I've got to go get everything we have out of the car so that we can turn it over. We got to do all the paperwork. I got to start researching to figure out what car we're going to buy and go buy the car. And oh yeah, by the way, like the rental car that they were paying for us to have, now they want it back because they made their decision, even though they haven't given us the money to go buy the car. Yeah. So that's number two. So I'm like, okay, like I'll handle this. It's going to be okay. But then our weeks never go like that. Like things always come in threes, I think. And so then inevitably, like 2 days later, I get a call from my daughter and her car's broken down on the side of the road again. It's the third time in like 3 months. And so this older car just keeps mounting and mounting. And so I'm dealing with all this on top of I'm trying to start a business, and we're like a week and a half out from the start of school. So kind of feeling the overwhelm. And so later that week, I'm sitting down one evening, everybody's in bed, and I am just totally spent. And as I was sitting there drinking a beer, because you gotta drink a beer, and reflecting on the day, the quote from Father Chaminade and this scene kept popping in my head. And mostly because I'm really not that good at being patient. I'd like to think I am, but I'm really not. And I'm really not good on waiting for God's timing and trusting that he's going to come through when I really need him to come through. I think maybe Father Chaminade, when I reflect on this quote, I think maybe he knew a little bit about this, which I find really interesting. He was fighting hard to figure out how to bring Christ into a world that was not only desperately in need at the time, but was incredibly resistant They didn't want God, and they didn't want the gospel message. And so surely he felt the pressure that was mounting. He felt like there wasn't enough time to get all the things done that he needed to get done. And even if there was enough time, there was absolutely no way he could have done it quickly enough. And then he probably felt the sting of going, I don't know, do I even have the skills? Am I the right guy? Do we have the right people? Maybe we need something else. So it's definitely something I can relate to, and something I can relate to in the morning. He's fighting with the anxiety of all the obstacles that lay ahead of him. So as I was reflecting on that, one of the thoughts that came to mind is I wonder if, like me, his thoughts went to thinking about Our Lady. Because Our Lady shows us how to toil, and how to toil really well. What's interesting about her is she's incredibly persistent and consistently showing up and just doing the work. She's often out of the limelight. She's not on the front lines of Jesus' ministry, but she's always there doing the work. See, she knew the path that God was calling her on, and that God was calling his son on. And even at times, she helped to push that path forward a little bit. But she was always sitting in the balance between her love for her son, her worry and anxiety as a mother, and then trusting in God's perfect timing. She was there, she was present, and she trusted. So in this reflection, what I wonder for Father Chaminade is, in part, if what he was asking himself and wondering was, or in part, not what he was wondering, but in part it was a reminder to himself of God's perfect timing, of being able to sit back and be patient and trust in where the Lord's taking us. The reminder that his power is endless and his reach is boundless for all of us. And so it became a way, maybe, I'd like to think, a way to unite with Our Lady, with Mary, to be able to just go and do and trust and be in the moment, and knowing that if we show up, that just like his quote, that God will overcome whatever obstacles are in our path. He will raise up the waters.